Assalamu alaikum, you're watching Views and News and I'm Faisal Rehman live from our Islamabad studios. Today we'll be talking about the Pakistan's economic outlook and especially regarding the Pakistan and IMF talks they've held in Doha. Now the interesting part is that the IMF in fact is still persuading the government of Pakistan to increase these prices of petroleum products and remove the subsidy. So is the case with the energy sector and in particular about the electricity prices. So now that is something of prime concern because the moment the electricity rates are increased, that is going to directly affect the industry, the domestic consumers as well at the end of the day. And when you talk about industry, the cost of doing business, definitely that is going to be the major area of concern. As far as the petroleum products are concerned, just imagine if the prices are increased, let's suppose by 30 to 40 rupees a litre, and imagine what sort of an impact that is going to have. Transportation cost is going to go up, traveling cost is going to go up, and eventually it is going to result in absolute inflation. Though the State Bank the other day, in fact, raised the interest rate by 150 basis points, and now it is at 13.75%, almost close to 14%, pretty high. But there are analysts who believe that in the coming days, the inflation could go up to 18%. Recently, I had a word with one of the major economists, senior most in Karachi, and the lady told us that 17 is what they are predicting, but that could be between 18 to 20 also. So just imagine 20% of inflation just in case if the prices are raised, what sort of an impact it is going to have on the general public. And I'm talking about not only the middle class or the lower class, but everybody is going to suffer. Currently, I'm just going to give you one example. Before Corona, the 20-foot containers price from Pakistan to United States of America was around $4,800 per container. That was the charge they used to get as far as the transportation cost is concerned. Now it is well over $20,000. So you can well imagine the price hike. And imagine when you talk about the cost of doing business, if that is going to go up, prices will increase, you won't be competitive anymore in the international market. And on top of that, once the fuel prices will be added to that. So that is something which is going to be a very concerning area regarding economy for the current government. And the budget is approaching, most likely the first or the second week of the next month, that is June. So we are hardly 4 weeks away, maybe less than that. That document is one of the most important documents of the year. That in fact defines and tells us about the economic outlook and the overall government's planning regarding the next year. But that is going to be again a challenge and a half for the current government. But before I introduce you to our panelists, our production team has prepared a report. Let's watch that first.
Shehbaz Sharif-led government and its economic team is currently struggling hard to take Pakistan out of the grave economic challenges. In this regard, the economic team of Pakistan under the leadership of Finance Minister Miftah Ismail is extensively engaging the IMF so that the Extended Fund Facility program could be revived and Pakistan could be taken out of the crucial economic dilemmas. In this regard, the International Monetary Fund concluded talks with Pakistani team for the revival of the Extended Fund Facility program and stressed taking concrete policy actions in the context of removing fuel and energy subsidies and the fiscal year 2023 budget to achieve program objectives. An International Monetary Fund mission led by Mr. Nathan Porter held both in-person and virtual discussions in Doha, Qatar with the Pakistani authorities to secure macroeconomic stability and supporting sustainable growth in Pakistan. Mr. Porter, in his official statement, declared the mission highly constructive as per discussions with the Pakistani authorities and stated that considerable progress was made during the discussions. Finance Minister Miftah Ismail also declared the talks with International Monetary Fund very useful and constructive and stated that the team of Washington-based lender emphasized the importance of rolling back the fuel power subsidies which were given by the PTI-led government in contravention of its own agreement with the fund. He added that in these talks, discussions were held about targets for fiscal year 2023, where in light of the high inflation, declining forex reserves and a large current account deficit, a tight monetary policy would be needed to consolidate the fiscal position.
Now to talk about it, let me introduce you to our panelists. We have with us in our studio on my right is Dr. Gulfraz Ahmad Saab, former Secretary of Petroleum, somebody who really understands about the energy issue in Pakistan. Sir, thank you very much for your time, and it's good
Most
to see you
welcome.
after a very long time, in fact.
Yes, indeed.
Sir, and we'll also be joining by Ashfaq Tola Saab. Ashfaq Tola Saab is the senior economist, president of Tola Associates. He's going to join us in our studio in a little while. And we'll also be talking to Sajid Amin Saab. He's the deputy executive director of SDPI. Gentleman is the senior economist, and he's going to join us on the telephone. Thank you very much for your time, Sajid Amin Saab, as well. But let me start off from you, Dr. Gulfraz Ahmad. Now, two major important issues, sir. IMF talks.
Yes.
Now, obviously, the IMF, most likely, they have some very genuine concerns where they're trying to persuade the government to increase the petroleum products price, along with taking away the subsidy on electricity, for that matter. Tell our viewers, and also, sir, please inform us and educate us about this particular impact that could be there if this particular step is taken, because we are in a dire need of those $6 to $8 billion in order to move forward, sir, because the economy isn't doing that great. Your take.
Faisal, first of all, we need to understand how does the IMF operate. The money that IMF holds, it is the money contributed by the members of IMF. And IMF is mandated not to brook any fiduciary risk to that money once they give that money to various countries to bail them out. So as we know that the IMF only bails out the government, it does not give money to institutions. And when the governments are in financial crisis, only then governments go to IMF. So this is also understood that any country like Pakistan, like now Sri Lanka, which approaching IMF, they are in financial difficulty, they are not being able to balance their books, and therefore they want bailout for some time to be able to do that. Now, IMF is traditionally very tough because they already know that the country in need has not yet been able to manage it well. And therefore, they do not want to give more money unless there are serious reforms. And that's what IMF would, every time that you negotiate a new loan, every time they
Sir,
bring
when
in,
we talk about
yes,
these reforms, the structural reforms, what
Yes.
exactly are they, by the way? So, because a lot of people do ask me, it's a very layman question, that why do we need money for reforms? Why? I mean, it's just something to think about and just come up with the solution. It involves decision-making process, and decision-making process doesn't need billions of dollars.
Yes. But you see, the point is that, as I said, that the country has already reached a point
Sir, if
where
we could talk like this,
it
yeah.
is not sustainable. Financially, the country is no more sustainable. That's why you go to IMF. And once you go to the IMF has been studying the situation, watching the situation, and they've already identified certain weaknesses in the financial management of that country. And now, before they want to put more money at stake, they want those visible financial weaknesses and mismanagements to be arrested. And that is what is called the negotiation of IMF loan. These are very tough talks because they know exactly what has been wrong with your economy, and sometimes those are very sensitive issues, but they know it exactly, and they want to discuss with you across the table how are you going to plug those loopholes and weaknesses so that more money also does not go down the drain.
All right.
So that's why IMF is sometimes IMF is driven only by financial issues, financial considerations. But sometimes they also have some strategic and political agenda. And this agenda is driven by the countries which contribute the maximum amount of money to IMF fund. And therefore, it is a dual sort of purpose vehicle, financial as well as some of these strategic realignments. So right now, what we are facing, the government in March this year, they were able to create a fiscal space of record collection of tax. And once they
Highest ever.
Highest ever record collection of tax. And the moment they did that, they also had hope that in coming 3 months, they would be able to maintain that level of collection. And therefore, with that little confidence, they created a fiscal space, and there was a very, very high cost of living increase in food security, inflation by many reasons. First of all, we know that for 2 years, because of pandemic, there was no economic activity, no industrial activity, and then suddenly everything opened up, and that actually caused the price of oil to go up, which is cost of energy. And with the price of oil going up, and also a few things happening, Indonesia stopping to export the
Of
palm
edible oil, yeah.
palm oil. Similarly, Russia and Ukraine, oil and food, the wheat going off the market. So the food inflation has overtaken the financial inflation, and there is actually a food insecurity.
At the same time, sir, if you allow me to put
Yes.
another question here, Russia and Ukraine produce about 29-30% of the wheat.
World wheat.
17% of the global fertilizer is produced
Yes.
in Russia. You talk about the energy going in from Russia to Europe. I mean that's unbelievable.
Yes.
Whether you
So
talk about
these
coal
are
or, but sir, at the same time, you know,
Yes.
when you say that there's going to be a crunch for a country like Pakistan, which is already referring to IMF for a bailout package. Sir, we will be importing about 3 million tons of wheat.
Wheat, yes.
Again, there's going to be scarcity because
I
we
don't
are
know,
short of
maybe
that.
even sugar.
Perhaps sugar,
Yes.
petroleum products,
Yes.
around sir, around $4 to $4.5 billion worth of edible oil.
Yes.
Then you talk about the pharmaceutical industry
Yes.
that also consumes around $4 billion,
Yes.
and then the chemicals, and there's a long list. But so this current,
So I was just going to
yeah.
say that last government, when they created their fiscal space, they got a little bit of confidence they'll be able to collect more money. They gave a relief to the people because people were coming under pressure of food inflation, other things. However, the new government now has had actually not too much of time to think it over, but the crisis in which Pakistan's economy and the financial situation is, they had to start thinking about it yesterday. So whatever time they have, they should have to, first of all, it is going to be almost impossible to convince IMF that they should not pass on increase in the petroleum and energy prices before the start of next financial. It will be impossible.
that sounds pretty interesting.
So we should really try to do some intermediate level of increase, not all the increase that's needed. At the same
it will be
time,
passed on, but it should be passed on in installments.
in installment. But at the same time, they should also make a resolve that they should not only maintain that level of tax collection, but go even higher, so that they can also create some fiscal space,
Yes.
and they can give a little assurance to the IMF.
Sir, one last quick comment
Yes.
before I move on to the other guest, Sajid Amin Saab. Tell us that, for example, if IMF doesn't agree and they literally tell you to do this or you won't be getting any money. Money is required, sir. The budget is approaching, and you know there's a lot of problem. You were talking about the fiscal space; it doesn't exist anymore, by
Yes.
the way, sir. You're talking about the circular debt that is hovering well over 2,500 billion rupees. I mean,
Yes.
again, it's an enormous amount. So, looking at the current scenario, let's suppose if the test collection doesn't increase but remains stagnant with the number where they are at the moment, and IMF deal goes through, but again, the prices are increased and the subsidy on
There'll
the
be, public-
electricity is also
Yes.
taken away.
Yes.
What sort of an impact do you think it's going to have on our final consumer? Let's put it this way.
First of all, the final consumer, not only in Pakistan but the world over, even countries like America and Europe, are finding
Highest inflation in 40 years.
Yes, highest inflation is 17-18% food inflation they are finding. So something is common across the world because of the circumstances that the global environment has gone through. But Pakistan, particularly, the people in Pakistan have their backs to the wall already. They do not have their savings or their cushions available. In fact, most of the time they earn during the day and feed during the day. So we will have to find a way of giving them some relief wherever we can, but essentially passing on the minimum increase that IMF would be happy with. That, as I said, that it's impossible to get.
That is the
IMF
core area of discussion.
Yes, that's. And at the same time, they have to make innovative effort to increase the tax. if they do not increase the tax and the tax stays at the current level and they pass on only a intermediate level of increase in energy prices, even then they don't cut with the IMF. So they will have to have multiple approach. Then of course you see the once your condition, economic condition is dire, then people should be able to see you doing dire saving measures. For example,
Exactly, this is what I was about to ask you.
Look at the foreign visits. Look at, these things are easily, they are very
Government
visible.
expenditure you're talking
Yes,
about.
these are visible to the IMF. IMF knows that where you need to economize, you're not. And where you need to pass on the burden because the whole world is feeling the burden, you are not. So I think we are in difficult. So the only thing that we are hearing is possibly that can at least give us some critical time.
And that is?
Is the Saudi re-rolling of those $3 billion. Which is only, at so far, it is only the news that Saudis have given a nod for re-rolling. If they do not, then we have to see how are we going to actually avoid serious movement towards the defaults. So our conditions, because look at our imports, critical imports that you need to have, and look at your purchasing power or the state of the current accounts deficit and other things. And then most of the countries...
So $65 billion, just imagine, that is not a joke.
Most of the countries, when they deal with you, even the commodities that they sell with you, they want to have assurance that you will be able to pay. For example, they would say, okay, you open the letter of credit before the ship will unload the petroleum products. And then
Let's suppose a deal with Qatar regarding LNG.
Well,
So
yes.
I'm just giving,
But
asking.
you see, LNG is a very small component. Even if we get some relief in LNG, but that's only 10-15% of our overall energy imports. So oil, where you get the petroleum products like the diesel, like the motor gasoline, the motor spirit, the aviation fuel, these are the ones which can constitute the bulk of our import, and along with that the LNG as well. So I think we need to seriously think over and draw an emergency plan that this we must do, and these are the measures we must enforce. Not only that we should be trying to save money, but we should be seen clearly to be saving money, so that the institutions or countries that are dealing with us, they have a little confidence in continuing to give us support. Right now, for example, our greatest support used to come from China, and which China is silent about it. So I don't know, with the current realignment, we should be having the support from United States, but if the support was coming from United States, you would see that in the form of IMF becoming a little bit more.
And as you earlier mentioned, because
Yes.
it is not only about the financial impact, it has its political concerns as well.
It has.
And
There's a
and
dual
they
arm.
really need to be
Yes,
addressed.
they do want to twist
All
the
right.
arm.
Now, we have also been joined in by Ashfaq Tola Saab, Senior Economist, President
Assalamualaikum,
Tola
Ashfaq, sir.
Associates. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum
And welcome to Islamabad, sir. I hope you
Yeah,
are having a
just
good
landed-
time here.
Just landed half an hour late, but it was all clear from Margala Road, so it took me around 25 minutes.
Yesterday, a lot was going on in the same city, sir. But anyway,
I was
let's talk about
watching at the
business now.
TV.
So, talking about the IMF, Dr. Gulfraz very, articulately explained what exactly is going on, the need and the urge for IMF. But, sir, at the same time, the fallout factor regarding that deal, that is going to be enormous as well. And we are just talking about two major issues. One is about the petroleum product prices. Second is about the energy cost. I'm talking about the electricity subsidy that is going to be taken away. So we are already suffering because of the high inflation, and that is hovering around well over 14%. You talk about, let's say, the food prices going up. Forget about the global impact, sir. The current situation in which Pakistan is an important country, whether you talk about oil, you talk about edible oil, you talk about wheat, sugar for that matter, chemicals, and there's a long list. But sir, one thing which is very important, and that is perhaps regarding the luxury goods, and people are not happy that the government has done this, and because at the end of the day they'll be able to save about $1 billion, $1.5 billion. But the we're talking about $65 billion. That is going to be a challenge and a half in the current scenario. So your take on that part?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you, Faisal, for having me in your show. Actually, the recipe of Pakistan economy lies in a total different direction. Due to huge parallel base, we need to have a recipe of low interest rate and managed parity, which we are forgetting. I mean, we are following Chicago school of thoughts, and basically this economic school or new economical classical model is not viable for us. This inflation, I mean, if you go back and just work out the inflation numbers of top inflation number of the countries, Pakistan is currently ranked at 4th. Obviously, after Sri Lanka and Turkey, Sri Lanka, Argentina, and then 4th we are, Brazil, and 4th we are. Basic concern, I mean, yes, we have an inflation in US, UK, and everywhere. Every country is subsidizing food and energy subsidies, giving energy and food subsidy everywhere. But the issue with us is not alone the food prices or commodity prices.
All right.
The issue with us is devaluation as well.
The devaluation?
Devaluation of currency.
Okay.
This rampant devaluation is causing us too much and is harming us too much. Actually, every 10 rupee of devaluation adds 1.5% of inflation. Every 10 rupee increase in petrol price to our calculation is adding around 0.5% of inflation, and every 10 rupees in diesel increase just add about around 0.6 to 0.65% in inflation.
And this is the direct impact.
It obviously
But sir, what we have seen that, you know, if petroleum products are increased by, let's suppose, 10 rupees per litre, diesel I'm talking about, the overall cumulative impact isn't of 10 rupees, perhaps it is of 15, 16, 17 rupees.
No, but it adds to an inflation of 0.65%.
Okay.
This is my calculation.
All right.
It may be wrong. The issue what we did, if you recall, on January 14, we announced maybe in the month of, I think, December end, and we approved this finance bill or maybe ordinance with supplementary finance bill on January 14 with an addition of 373 billion worth of taxes by way of reducing or eliminating the exemptions in the Sales Tax Act. Furthermore, we increased the petrol price accordingly in the month of February, maybe around 14th of Feb, I think 12 rupees a litre. And then again, we had a fuel adjustment surcharge we levied on 27th of September. All of a sudden, on 28th of Feb, it seems that we woke up on the wrong side of the bed, and we gave, in fact, so much concession to the people. And it was like a cluster bomb.
You think that decision taken by the government to facilitate the people wasn't a correct one as far as the economy of Pakistan is concerned?
Absolutely wrong.
All right.
Absolutely wrong. And on that very day, I've told the media that this is absolutely wrong.
I remember they were supposed to increase, and they in fact decreased.
Exactly, and then froze as well. And you see, it was a humongous cost. The cost was 476 billion rupees. If you recall correctly, and you have an archive, if I am not wrong, just look at the press conference of, or maybe address of the former Prime Minister, and he said that we have collected an excess taxation worth 268 billion rupees, and we have dished out this to just mitigate the inflation towards the masses. Then on 9th of March, former Finance Minister Shaukat Tareen, he held a press conference and he said that the total impact is 367 billion rupees. Now I have seen a handwritten note from the Honorable former Finance Minister that the cost is 476 billion. And he gave some, you see, breakdown of that how we would cover. But the crux of the matter is, it was actually it was unfunded. And to fund that huge unfunded is a mammoth task. 476 billion. I mean, the recipe.
I remember, sir, this used to be the PSDP for Punjab a few years ago, this amount.
Well, I mean, this should be.
This is a huge amount.
And actually, if you recall, I can show you the clip on the media on 11th of August. On 11th of August, I said that the current account deficit, if you go this way, will not be less than $16 billion. I'll send you the clip. On 11th of August, I have predicted that. We had the working, but unfortunately from government side they were not accepting this. According to them, that State Bank has suggested $8 to $9 billion, and according to the spokesman of Minister of Finance, he said that it will not exceed $5 billion. And then he put every blame on this increase in petrol prices or maybe oil prices, and then Ukraine war. I mean, so on and so forth. But actually, it was written on the wall.
It was supposed to happen.
It was supposed to happen, and I was very confident.
And it happened.
It happened. You see, that's why I'm saying that the recipe of Pakistan economy is different. If you want to open up, just open up.
But sir, another question here, sir. You look at the current interest rates. So who's going to, you're an industrialist yourself, you're a businessman, sir. You hail from a city like Karachi, which is the economic hub of Pakistan. And we always look up to people from Karachi because they know more, for sure, because they're doing that business practically. Now, sir, tell us about one thing. Number one, that let's suppose that this budget is approaching, sir. That is going to be a very important document, as we were talking about it earlier. That is going to be a task and a half for the current government, sir. For sure, sir. This could be a budget where people might not be able to get that kind of relaxation which they always expected. But sir, just talking about 2-3 major impacts. For example, in Karachi, when you talk about the cost of doing business, that is surely going to go up, sir.
Obviously.
Right?
And
the
that
competitiveness that you have, the edge you might have in the international market, that is going to go away. Price matters, for sure, sir. Second impact, sir, when you talk about the interest rate, that is around 13.75%, and most likely, because if they want to look after the inflation impact, sir, because I personally believe that doesn't create. Just imagine.
15.11.
Just imagine. And then on top, you talk about controlling inflation, sir. Your growth seems to be impossible. I'm not sure what would be the number. Somebody says 4%, but whatever, sir. This interesting mix, just like we used to talk about energy mix, this interesting mix, sir, how do you see this, and what is going to be the outcome now, Tola sahab?
Well, ab initio, when I made this statement that the recipe of Pakistan economy lies in a controlled parity and low interest rate. Yes.
And low interest rates.
Yes.
Simple.
Most of the economies, they are operating on negative interest rates, and their inflations are high as compared to their interest rates. Okay. Like, see an example of US. Their inflation is around 8%, whereas their policy rate is around 0.25. Okay. So, in these dire straits, where the economy is really in stress, you have to go for beyond out of box. But in our case, because we are tied up and we can't say anything to IMF, we have to toe their line. Like, just look at it. They have said that increase the policy rate, we have increased. Now they are saying that increase your energy prices, remove subsidies. And it is a huge impact on a common man.
Absolutely.
Well, I was expecting, I don't know, I am sure that Miftah Ismail Saab has certainly tried to convince them that instead of a direct a subsidy across the board, we can have a targeted subsidy. I mean, in my humble view, I may be wrong. I mean, there are so many opinions like noses, everyone has one. So, in my opinion, I think we should give a direct subsidy through ESAS program to a below level income, maybe
income group,
1,500 or maybe 2,000 per month for an X amount as an ad hoc interim maybe relief. And then we can force the private entrepreneur and as well as the government to increase the salaries of people by say 10%, those who are earning up to 50,000, 7.5%.
You could bracket those and accordingly.
And then, I mean, accordingly, up to 100,000, those who are, I mean, they are living, I mean, accordingly and hand to mouth, so they can get a relief. Simultaneously, you have to have some exchange controls, like you can introduce maybe 100% margin, and if somebody wants to, like in car, I mean luxurious car or maybe jeeps and everything and SUVs, if people can arrange their own exchange, and if they can remit even their duties in dollars to Pakistan in a me-to-me account, and they are getting these cars, at least I see no problems. But you cannot suppress the economy. I'll be the last one to suggest to the government to stop.
So at the end of the day, the most important
this
budget is about the economic growth.
But this budget is like, on a lighter side, I'm saying it's going to be a Mola budget, very tough. So it's a Mola budget, and I mean I think really they have to come very hard on it.
Right.
How they balance it from the perspective of a poor person, or maybe an underprivileged, I would not say poor, maybe underprivileged people or low income group, it is yet to see.
All right, sir. So we've also with us Sajid Amin Saab, senior economist, SDPI. And now let's see, sir, you said that everybody has an opinion. So let's see what Sajid Amin Saab has to say. Sajid Saab, Assalamu alaikum. Sajid Amin Saab, can you hear me? Assalamu alaikum. Hello? I think the line has dropped or something. But sir, coming to you now, another very important aspect, and that is about the increase in exports. So at the end of the day, you are earning money either through remittances, and they have crossed a good limit, sir, and I'm sure. But sir, that money, when it's sent to Pakistan, normally it's invested in real estate, most of it, real estate and construction. The government started this program called the previous one, Roshan Pakistan. So people actually borrowed money from the United States of America on a very minimal percentage, invested in Pakistan, they were making money out of it. Not sure about...
Even in hot money. I mean, through your program, sir, I'm sorry, I'm intervening. Through your program, please add this, that they must do or investigate or conduct a forensic audit of hot money.
Hot money.
And you'll get many a thing.
I'm sure, because sir, it's all about money.
You will unmask so many faces.
All right. Now, sir, another aspect, where you talk about certain other features also. But sir, in this particular case, when we're talking about, obviously everybody wants to have a better living standard, and that is what the punchline is all about.
Yes.
You talk about numbers. At the end of the day, if a person can afford a decent living, can afford his kids to go to school, can afford the medical and other such utilities for that matter, sir. So somebody is living a decent life. But sir, in Pakistan, when you look at the number of people living below the poverty line, for example, clean drinking water is still an issue. Even polio drops, that has become a challenge and a half for certain governments in certain provinces. Now, sir, the macro environmental factors, the global problems, we cannot sort. Simple as that. I mean, you can't become somebody to stop the war between Ukraine and Russia. That is going to go on. US has its own interest, Russia has its own. But sir, when it comes to micromanagement, so unfortunately, I'm not going to name any government, but most of the governments, they have miserably failed. Claims are very high, but when it comes to the real deal, we all know at the end of the year when we get these documents. The way forward, sir, because nobody talks about the way. For example, when we talk about the import of petroleum products, sir, we can put a check. Forget about the government expense that, sometimes we see these staff cars, they don't even switch them off. As long as the minister who XYZ is inside the studio, the car is on. What is this, sir? Don't you think this is also about the waste of water, for that matter? I was listening to Rehman, sir. We are in dire straits at the moment. And you were right. I remember when you used to talk about water scarcity and food scarcity. Now that has also become, even the climate change, global warming, that has become a part of your national security plan. Now, how to move forward, sir? What has been in the past has been in the past. You can't go back and change the history. But moving forward, sir, let's talk about what needs to be done now. So let's start from the energy, because today we are just focusing on two important factors. One is petroleum prices and the other is about the electricity charges. And both are linked currently with the IMF deal, sir.
See, first of all, when we talk about energy, particularly the electricity side of energy, we have, truly speaking, surplus generation capacity. Installed capacity is more than what we can economically use if all of it is generating.
Then why aren't we generating it?
I come to that. The other day, your former Minister of Energy, Shahid Khan Abbasi, he gave an answer. He said for generating this much more energy, we spend this much of foreign exchange and import of fuel, and therefore the priorities are clear. The fact is that you cannot afford to import all the required fuel to generate the electricity for which we have generation capacity. That's number one. Second is the capacity price. If you look at the newly installed generation capacity, and if you look at the capacity price that you have to pay to them, even if they do not generate single megawatt of power, that is horrendous, and that's what has gone into trillions of rupees. So we have serious issues, structural issues with the energy are the bad decisions of overcapacity and promising higher charges than which should have been the competitive rate. That is one issue. Second issue is that we continue to live with serious losses in the transmission and distribution of power. When you have a grid, you have a national grid apart from the local grid in Karachi, and whatever power you put into the grid, 40%.
Discos and so many other reasons.
Yeah. No, these are transmission lines, the grid stations, discos. The 40% of the power that you put into the grid does not come into the bills. So that is one loss.
The leakages.
These are the thefts, the losses, unaccounted for, all those things. Out of the 60% that you actually sold, that you don't have all the recoveries.
So is it true that we need around $60 to $70 billion in order to totally transform and change our distribution of electricity? Is it true? I mean, the number should be close to that?
No, not that much, because you have to do
that seems to be an impossible task.
You have to do it in stages. If you look at, for example, I just give you the natural gas. Our system, incidentally, we are one of the countries with the highest infrastructure of gas transportation, transmission and distribution. So that is a great energy asset. But it's an old asset. We have leakages, and that, like Bangladesh, used to have same level of leakages, 10%, 8%, but then the Australian gave them a help, and now the leakages have come down to 3%. In Australia, gas leakages.
And what exactly did they do?
The fittings. You know, wherever you have connections, the pipes connecting, they are modern.
And the material and the modern technology.
Teflon-based fittings which can withstand high temperatures. My estimation is that if we work out, I think the money that you'll spend on improving the leakages of the gas infrastructure, you can recover in about 3 years. So someone has to invest that money to recover, maybe with a higher degree of profit. That is one. Same is the case with the grid. You have a very old grid. There was a time when the countries used to look at Pakistan's national grid with envy. Country across the border on eastern side has only state grid, very limited interstate connection capacity. We have a national grid. If you generate power, let's say in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, it's delivered in Karachi, it's delivered in Balochistan. So, but the grid is old. And once again, in order to control transmission and distribution losses, in order to control the stoppages and the faults, you need to invest money in that. So you are right that we need to invest a lot of money, but there has to be some creative solution.
All right.
If we try to make an arrangement for someone to invest and recover at a guaranteed return.
Now you talk about the private sector again.
Private sector, guaranteed return of that level of return that will make meet their expectations, then you can actually undertake gas infrastructure as well as power infrastructure, its repair, its upgradation. is so that it becomes more reliable, there are less outages, and that is beyond the public sector, so it ought to be actually done creatively in that manner. And now, every government has tried to renegotiate those tariffs of electricity. You know, for example, when there was a strategic discussion with the Chinese in the last year, they brought their whole team, and there was a question from the audience. I was the keynote speaker and said, what guarantees will Pakistan government offer that we continue to recover our expected returns from these investments? And I said that no one can give a guarantee for 50 years or 40 years or 30 years at the power plants. The only guarantee would be if you have done that business transparently, if you have done competitive bidding in installing those things, and if you use the best technology, that is your guarantee. But we know the Chinese installed these power plants, they nominated the company. We should have insisted that do a competitive bidding from among the Chinese company, the cost would have come down. So those decisions that were taken at the time when we negotiated 30,000 megawatt of power will haunt our economy, energy economy for all time to come, until at some point in time the Chinese become so sympathetic to us that we can sit down and we can renegotiate the things.
At least at the end of the day, sir, we also have to do something and deliver at the end of the day. Sir, coming to you because we're running out of time. Sir,
Yes.
One important factor, we were talking about the energy mix. I think we should do another show, a complete show on energy mix, because we have already done so many. And
Yes.
I mean, there are so many solutions, so many remedies were also given, but nothing has happened. So talking about the wind energy, you're talking about, so we are still relying on thermal, number one, which we are importing. Perhaps for ad hoc basis, this is the correct decision, but for the long term, you need to have something in your mind. Sir, looking at the hydel projects, I mean, either the water goes waste or there is an absolute scarcity of water in the rivers. Yes, sir, atomic energy is very important, and we are working on that. Good enough. But sir, coal, don't you think, sir, when you talk about the modern world talks about the emissions, even in the cars, Volkswagen or XYZ company, 200,000 cars were sent back because, you know, they were 0.06%, they were emitting more. This is the standard. And over here, sir, whether you're talking about the making of bricks, you can see what is going on. So especially in Punjab, it doesn't happen much in Sindh, in that area, but over here, every third village has a couple of those claims, and, you know, we all know what happens after that. Even the rubber tires are burnt so that they can extract the steel out of it. You know, just imagine. Definitely, sir, the nation has to understand water security is going to become a new problem. Food security, I was surprised to know that 80% of the pulses we are importing. So basic grain, if that is being imported for the people, I mean, God knows where we are heading. Now, just tell us one thing, sir, because you interact with the business community, with the industrialists and the chamber and the FPCCI and the KCCI and so much in Karachi. Sir, I'm sure the business community has solutions, but sir, now the government has decided to get involved with the business community, and rather taking decisions on their own behalf, people like you will be consulted. So sir, if I may put this question, that what should be the way forward? Tola Saab, what are you going to say?
Who will trust, first of all? Do you know whether this government will be here next month?
To be honest, no, sir.
Then who will trust us? A businessman, money has no nationality. Money has no nationality. It is like a nomad. If I get a better return outside Pakistan, I will go and invest. As you rightly said, that people used to borrow, and they are borrowing from US and investing in Pakistan and making bonanzas out of it.
Oh, yes.
So who will trust unless you give them a guarantee that next one will come and will not change? Next one will not come and open their cases.
Consistency in policy.
Yes, Charter of Economy.
Okay.
And I am advocating that since 1993. Do have a charter of economy.
Democracy is for their own benefit, na, sir, that charter. So
I
this
don't
is for the
know.
people.
I mean, you see, basically, and as a nation, we have to understand our responsibilities as well. We know our rights. We know our constitutional rights, that this is my constitutional right. But when it comes to paying of taxes, when it comes to assuming the responsibility or shoulder it, we are saying sorry, let the next man do it. So it's like, you see, we have to build as a nation, even after 75 years, we are not, but we have to start afresh. And this is what key to our success. Because we have seen, I mean, our attitude is like, I mean, first myself, second myself, third myself. If we reverse the order, what Japanese are following, that first my country, second my company, third myself. If you say first myself, second my company, and third my country, believe you me, you can leave Japan aside. You can go like anything, you can just pick up anything, and your economy must be blooming. You can become a role model for the world. But when you work, it's including me. I'm not blaming anyone else. First myself, second myself, third myself. You have it.
That is a recipe for disaster for the country. Totally agreed, sir. But since I was just told to...
I just want to very quickly say
one,
that,
sir.
first of all, in the very history of Pakistan, we never had so many hydropower projects which are currently at a fast pace of construction.
All right.
Maybe 10 to 12,000 megawatt of
Yes.
power. So that is something...
And that also cheap energy as compared to what we're producing.
Apart from that, it's more than the electricity. You get the water for irrigation, and food, of course, is the bigger challenge. So that is one redeeming feature right now that you have. The second thing is that there is a greater proliferation of solar power in the world. Wind is only if you have harvestable wind. Solar power, you know, the way we are burning.
Sir, I got a chance to travel from Denmark via Sweden to Norway by car. And I was surprised to see they have those solar plants installed in the sea.
In the sea.
I mean,
because of this space shortage.
Throughout the journey, every
Yes.
village was being provided electricity.
What
through
I
those
want
windmills.
to say is that when it comes to solar power, the real revolution potential is rooftop. All those people, nearly 35–40%, who do not have electricity grid reaching to them, just
Sir, people in the villages are using this technique.
yes, no, but
Just to have two bulbs and maybe a fan working.
and take away these duties which are now
But sir, now we have to really
It
work
has
on
been abolished.
war footing.
abolished.
Yeah.
We have to
In
work on war
Karachi,
footing, sir.
Prime Minister has announced that there will be no sales tax.
Yeah, it was 17%, but they have reduced it now. They have actually, there is nothing now. But anyway, sir, thank you very much. Tola sir, it was a pleasure having you, sir. And again, once again, welcome to Islamabad, sir. Enjoy your stay here. And that's all we have for this up. I'll see you, inshallah, on Monday at 8:05 p.m. Till then, you take good care of yourself. Have a great weekend. Khuda Hafiz.